All right, on the show today, Toby Sola. So Toby is a creator, founder, co-founder, CEO of Brightmind, which is one of my favorite meditation apps, associated particularly with Shinzen Young, who's someone I regard very highly. I've chatted to Toby a couple of times in other contexts, so looking forward to getting to know you a bit more today. Toby, welcome.
Hi, Mark. Really good to be here. Excited to jam.
So what kind of childhood trauma got you interested in meditation and all this hippie stuff? Like, how did you get started with this?
That is a really funny question. I might be somewhat unique in that I don't think I have childhood trauma that drew me to it. It was a genuine interest in spirituality, actually, for the fruits and the connectedness and the meaning, actually. So I grew up in Vermont, which is in the northeast of the United States, and it's very rural. 80% of the state is forested. And I grew up a mile from the Appalachian Trail. If any of the listeners know where that is, it's this gorgeous hiking trail that winds through the Appalachian Mountains. So nature was really my first teacher, and I would spend hours and hours and hours just wandering around in the woods, bushwhacking with my dog. And
What's bushwhacking?
bushwhacking is romping through the woods without any trails.
Got
It's
it.
10 times more fun than following a trail.
Getting attacked by bears and walking into poison ivy and all those things you can do in the States.
Exactly. And also having to keep a sense of direction. I think there's even a spiritual practice around that in terms of being aware. And so I had a number of profound experiences just wandering in the woods. And also adding to that, my neighbor was very interested in Native American spirituality. And so my brother and I would go over to her house, and she taught us a lot of the basics of meditation. We also did sweat lodges with her. It was very impactful as a kid. And so I started meditating a little bit then, but when I really got into it was chronic disease was maybe the best answer to your question.
I knew it. If it's
There's
not
something.
It's sickness. Everyone on the show.
Sickness.
Everyone on the show.
I would have probably forgotten about it if it wasn't for my chronic disease. So yeah, I got Lyme disease when I was 17. It got worse and worse and worse. By the time I was 21, I had to take a year off of university to figure stuff out, see doctors. And during that year, I met Shinzen Young, who's a common teacher between you and I. And meeting Shinzen was incredibly inspiring. Everything I had done before kind of fit right into a larger grid or a larger system of mystical practice. And it was so inspiring to see that and his kind of scientific clarity. And I just started practicing a lot. I started teaching pretty soon after. And that's basically that's the story of how I got into meditation.
Great. We should probably say a little bit about Shinzen's system, because he's still not as widely known as I would like. I mean, he's not sort of obscure, but he's not, more people have heard of, I don't know, Tara Brach or Sharon Salzberg or someone. And I think there's a level of intellectual rigor to what he does. There's Absolutely. A level of really understanding Asian cultures. Like not just sort of going out to India for 6 months or something, but he really speaks multiple Asian languages, has a scientific mindset, mathematical mindset. It's wonderfully geeky. It's integrative, and it brings together various schools in a way that kind of makes sense in a very Western context. And he's just a pleasant, lovely guy as well, my experience, and with a good sense of humor. He wore my make meditation great again hat, and just to troll some people. I mean, is that a fair description of Shinzen? Like, what would you add to that for the sort of the
Absolutely. Yeah. My favorite way to describe what's unique about his approach actually is he makes things as simple as possible, but no simpler. And I think I've explored this theme a lot in Brightmind, but he really came up with this original direction, I think, or this original style, which is not skimping on the depth of practice and teaching, like really delivering industrial strength results, really transformational practices. This isn't just zone out or chill out for 10 minutes a day. It's transform how you think of yourself and really powerful stress relief strategies fulfillment on demand, sophisticated, efficient tools for really making progress in a powerful way, but also just like as simple as possible. I think that's what he nails, is it's a balance between that.
Yeah, I certainly found that, like, the practices can be straightforward, and as you say, it's not just stress relief, 10 minutes a day.
Right.
You know, his books, The Science of Enlightenment, is really sort of taking that seriously. I'd point, if listeners want to hear him, we've had him on the show a couple of times. I'd point listeners to the episode with him and Paul Linden, who's one of my embodiment teachers.
Oh, great.
Where they tell some terrible, terrible Jew jokes between the two of them, because they're both from a Jewish background. And I'm just sitting there dumbfounded, going, I can't possibly join in. But yeah,
that's funny. The last I recorded a podcast with Shinzen a little bit ago, and we also made some Jew jokes, which was good. I'm also Jewish. My mom's a rabbi, actually.
Another
So,
Jewboo.
Yes, another Jewboo. Yeah,
you've got that rabbi feel to you.
I know. I got a nice thick dark beard.
Well, you know,
I look really good in a suit.
Bushy one, you look Orthodox. I got told I look like an Ukrainian Orthodox priest the other day with, I quote, mad blue eyes and a big bushy beard, and I was wearing all black. They said you look like a Ukrainian Orthodox priest. I'm not sure what I thought of that, but
yeah.
Why are so many Jews into Buddhism? Like Rob Babaya, another one of my teachers in the past who was Jewish.
Oh yeah, I mean Joseph Goldstein. So many of the modern Western teachers are Buddhists. There's a lot of theories about that. I think one theory is that Judaism maintained its mystical core a little better than Christianity, if you're looking at the two major religions in the West. So Christian mystics did not do well in the Middle Ages. They got like crucified a lot, and it was really ostracized, whereas Judaism more so held space for and made room for, you could say, more mystical versions of Judaism. I think the Baal Shem Tov in Eastern Europe, kind of, which created the modern Hasidic, modern Orthodox community, you could say that he was more of a mystical practice, and so that's like a core of what's around in Judaism now. So I think that's part of it. And
an intellectual rigor, the kind of like Buddhism's kind of like a religion you can't argue with,
right? Well, a lot of people say that, or one way to put it, Buddhism is like it's a spiritual practice, a psychology, and a philosophy. And like the psychology and philosophy, especially the philosophy, like it has that intellectual rigor, right? That definitely marries well with the Talmudic traditions in Judaism and debate. There's a huge interest in intellectual debate and lots of lawyers. And so
I've taught in Israel probably about 20 times, and it's simultaneously my favorite and least favorite place to teach, for this, because people just argue, and there's a sort of great questions, great inquiry on the positive side, but there
are definitely pros and cons.
Sometimes there are definitely pros and cons, but it's I can see how that sort of Buddhism sort of stands up to that, particularly something like
Shinzen. I think also just culturally, a lot of Jewish families in really the 50s and 60s, I think they were socially and kind of culturally open-minded, maybe more so than a lot of Catholic families. And so their kids it was just like more maybe appropriate they weren't going to freak out if their kid went to India and studied with someone there. And that's just conjecture. I don't know if that's actually true, but I have a feeling that Jewish, the culture is a little bit more open, like liberal, open-minded, culturally, socially progressive, and I don't know.
Listen, we better be quiet about the Jews, because Kanye West will think it's a conspiracy, an embodiment conspiracy. You know, we've got to be careful now. It's back in the news. So, all right. So let's go back to the app then. So you, what possessed you to want to found a company making an app? I mean, you know, you're meditating with Shinzen, doing that happily. How did the app come into things?
So The app came into being mostly because I saw incredible value in Shinzen's approach to teaching, and I wanted to scale it. I wanted to make it offerable. I wanted to make high quality meditation instruction widely available at low cost. And apps certainly have their pros and cons. It's not as good as one-on-one coaching, but it does have the ability to scale really easily. And so that was the initial impetus. And I worked with Shinzen very closely, especially in the first few years, in order to really craft something that that would do due diligence.
No, I genuinely like Brightmind. I'm not saying that to you here. It's one of my 2 or 3 favorite meditation apps. And what do you think makes it a good app?
So I talked with a user just yesterday, actually, and she was telling me that she had used a few apps, but none of it had really stuck. And used a few meditation apps. But when she found Brightmind, she felt like she had struck gold. Those were her words, that she struck gold. And I talk with members of the Brightmind community all the time, and I keep track of what they say. 90% of our users say something along these lines, that they used a bunch of apps before, nothing really caught on, maybe their practice plateaued, and then they found Brightmind, and it was just like totally mind-blowing. One of my favorite.
Why? I mean, the content's great, obviously, but what
Well, so
features?
that's it. I think it's the approach. So when I write meditations, my motto is kind of like I was saying before, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. So transformational practices explained in like really practical, simple ways. And I'll give some examples just to maybe bring it down to earth.
Yeah.
So there are 5 benefits to meditation. There's one way to slice up the pie. I call them the 5 facets of happiness. So they're stress relief, be more fulfilled, understand yourself, sharpen your skills, and improve the world. So in Brightmind, I'll just give you examples of like how we support people in each of those. In terms of stress relief, one of the things you learn very early on is the turn toward, turn away strategy. And the basic idea is you can either turn away from the source of stress or turn toward it. When you're turning away, you focus on something emotionally neutral like sounds or the physical body. And if you turn toward the source of stress, you can actually learn to break up the unpleasant thoughts and feelings into what part is mental image, what part is mental talk, what part is emotional body sensation. And that clarity, even if the thoughts are still happening, that clarity about where they're happening in space, what type of experience they are, actually brings a ton of relief. And so this simple turn toward, turn away framework that we give people is simple, but it's very powerful. And, you can't expect miracles, but with practice, on-demand stress relief is absolutely achievable. The second facet of happiness is be more fulfilled. An example of that is we explore meditations that fill the body with energy. And it's, something that you may not be expecting if you're just getting into meditation, but absolutely there are meditations that can really fill your body with blissful, energetic flows of energy. And again, you can't expect miracles, but on-demand fulfillment's totally possible with practice. The third facet of happiness is understand yourself, which is so something that we go over in Brightmind is snacks, which are just meditations that last less than 5 minutes. And the basic instruction with that is that you sprinkle your day with snacks, you pepper your day with snacks. And so you could do, like, let's say you have a presentation at work, an important presentation at work, you could do like a 3-minute snack before the presentation, a 3-minute snack after the presentation. So we're getting into more like meditation, not only to chill out, but also to help you be like effective in the world. Like, let's kill that let's kill that presentation that you have. And I could go on and on. Just to mention like 2 more quick examples is we actually do offer now one-on-one coaching through the app, and retreats, which are at least 3 hours of practice. We're holding monthly retreats. And so just to back up a bit, notice that everything I just said was relatively simple. I could explain it in like a few sentences, but it packs a punch, right? So again, transformational practices explained in simple and in practical ways. And it really impacts people. Like I was talking to another user that was an ER nurse, an emergency room nurse, and she was about to quit. And then she found Brightmind, and she's not only like doing okay, she's like thriving. She's like able to support some of her other nurses. So this is really impactful meditation, a way to approach meditation. And another way that I say it is like, it's an operating system that you can run your whole life on. And we do that via the simple approach, as simple as possible, but no simpler. We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So that's kind of our approach.
So it's not so much that, I don't know, like I was using Duolingo quite a lot recently, where there's sort of gamified approach where you get coins, or, you know, mobile games that give you rewards. And it's not so much that. You're saying it's sort of just more like good quality content.
Well, both and actually. We do, I think those are separate dimensions. So you can have a delightful app experience, which I do think includes things like animations and goal setting and getting a badge if you meditate 3 days in a row. We actually have a lot of that stuff, and we're building out some more of it. But that's just the delightful app experience, and it's helpful to have that. But what really makes us, that's not what makes us unique. What makes us unique is after the bell rings at the beginning of the meditation, what you hear and what you experience. So the content absolutely is our strong point.
Yeah, there's sometimes there's little things like there's a bunch of apps I've stopped using because they always have sickly sweet Californian breathy voices, and I don't want to be meditating on my irritation the whole time, you know. So it's I can sit with it, but apps that have several teachers' voices, it could be as simple as that. And then others, it's just there's sort of a hassle. There's other apps where there's just so much on them. It's just a huge hassle to find.
Well, that's actually another unique thing that I would say. That was another unique thing that we've done. So you've seen a number of versions of Brightmind probably, and we iterate really quickly. The latest version, which I'm not sure if you've seen, there is no more library approach because of exactly what you say. Users they're not experts. Why would you show someone who doesn't know anything about meditation 1,000 different options? Some of these libraries are huge. So we've thrown that away. We have completely converted to what's called a journey experience. Is one meditation at a time. There's only one meditation that you can do. You open the app and you press play. Great. Extremely simple. And that has added benefits. Exactly. No decision fatigue. People make enough decisions in their daily life, and it has a huge added benefit because the learning can build on itself. So I know what you did yesterday. I can reference it in today's meditation, and I can build on that, which that is actually from like a strategy teaching perspective, the journey, switching to a journey experience where it's one at a time, linear learning journey, that was actually necessary in order to do the level of teaching that I wanted to do, in order to convey the sophisticated and sometimes subtle concepts and practices that we want to get to people. The only way to practically do that is to do it linearly. It's I tried to do it kind of in previous versions via a library, and it just didn't work. Yeah, because it's random. You need kindergarten before you go to college, you know.
Right, like we run a 9-month embodied coaching course, and you can't do month 7 before you've done month 3. You know, exactly. It builds on it. You know, we teach people things and they learn to coach them. I do one course where it's kind of just crazy different stuff every week, and that's fun in a different way. But in terms of depth of learning, not so much. You know, there's the sort of drop in, drop out approach. Like the average yoga class is a drop in class, right? It's
and there's a limit. There's a limit to the depth of learning that you can do within that structure. It also has its benefits, right? Because there's pros and cons to every approach. That's one thing that I've learned from Shinzen is there are pros and cons to any approach, and you should be honest about the pros and cons. And one of the cons is that maybe it doesn't feel as some people do want to choose some specific meditation that really is exactly what they want. But in our research, like this isn't just my opinion. We've done a lot of research around this. Most people don't want that.
And just taking even a step back, we produced an app for Embodiment Unlimited a few months ago. We just started this out there, and I wasn't sure, there's some work to do, but we kind of just gradually had some tech guys work on it. And what I noticed was I bought a load of courses and just wasn't doing them because I'd have to go to a website, log in, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I'm talking like a level of laziness, but it's also just habit. Like I watch YouTube every day on my phone.
Yeah.
It's so easy. I'm waking up in the morning, I'm having a coffee just to get ready from, morning meditation. It's just so easy to put the app on, press button. We've had loads of customers say, I finally finished that course that I bought 2 years ago because you've now got an app. And I'm like, it's like I finally got around to watching the course. Or, it's one was saying yesterday, she was really happy. She's saying, I watch you while I'm doing my cooking. And she has a little phone and it's stuck up on the side and she's, stirring a stir fry, whatever she's cooking. And she watches her 20 minutes of lessons with Mark a day on her phone. She's doing an hour a week. She's working her way through the whole course just while she's on her phone, while she's doing the cooking. But if it wasn't an app, she wouldn't do that. Like there's something about an app that just makes it that little bit lubricated for people.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear about that. And I think, the medium is really important. You can have the same content and even the same design and have it be a website, and it just has a really different feel than if it's an app. And you're right, having it in a native mobile application it's a lot more delightful, actually. It relates to kind of what we were saying before. But as you may be starting to experience, and as I certainly have experienced, it also comes with a lot of headaches. It's a lot harder to develop, depending on how you do it or whatever. But for all those entrepreneurs out there, a lot of people say like, I'll just make an app. And I'm like, no, don't start. Don't start.
I mean, I said to my tech guys 3 months ago, I was like, we've got the courses on there. That's good for everyone. That's going well. I said, can you just put the shop on there so we can sell our stuff as well? Because we weren't really making any money from it. It was nice for the clients.
Sure.
And they looked at me like, we'll do that this afternoon, Mark. And just sort of eye rolled. 3 months later, the shop's probably going to go online. And
it's everything. You have to do it all custom. And there's so many, software development is like building a house. It takes at least twice as long and twice as much money as you plan for.
I really regret we didn't make an app for the embodiment conference 2 years ago and kind of going with that. And one idea we've got is to have a directory of classes using an app, because there's so many different embodiment
teachers
out there, different classes, and it's so tricky to have that all in one place. Kind of thing would be a huge advantage for people.
Absolutely.
But that's the latest thing in the works. Not quite there yet, but we shall see. We shall see. It's more work than people think. And the simpler the app, something like, I don't know, Airbnb or Tinder or Facebook, like an app that's really smooth or easy to use, is actually an incredible technical piece of work behind the scenes, right? To make it that simple.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the companies that you just mentioned have thousands of people working full time.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's tough.
And it's a lot of it's about making it elegant. Like if I think of, say, online dating, Tinder's swipe left, swipe right. Now there's a lot of disadvantages to that, a lot of problems that have come with that, I think, in society.
Sure.
But they took an experience of, I have to put in things and read profiles, and they simplified it to this very, very easy thing to do. And as soon as they did that, they'd won the game.
Yeah, I think what you're pointing to is the centrality of like user experience and design, like design thinking. So these are, and I've gotten my feet a bit wet in this, just doing my own designing Brightmind. I've done most of the design work, and yeah, there's a lot you can learn from just like prototyping it and put it in front of people and watch how they use it, and then gather that feedback and iterate. And that's a lot of what I think makes a good app, is doing a lot of research, honestly, and watching people use some of your ideas and simplifying it as much as possible, and really focusing the user's attention on what matters and what's going to provide value to them, because our attention, especially on your phone, is so fragmented. With a click of a button, you could be on social media, But so how are we going to really provide so much value that people are going to stay on the app? And those are really interesting and like fruitful design questions.
Yeah, it's interesting, the social media one. For a long time, I was addicted to it. I used to have to keep taking it off my phone to be
Yeah.
productive. On
Mm-hmm.
some level, I've got a level of insight into it now. I don't,
Mm.
I go on there, do the thing. Like today, it was, hey, I'm in the Algarve in Portugal. Is anyone around? Did another post just celebrating a good friend of mine that I'd left in Brighton. Say, I love this guy. 5 minutes of my day. Wasn't
Yeah,
tempted. It's something like
that's great.
tech insight that we need, because you can set up systems that stop you using it, or you can delete it, and then that's what I used to delete the app, then re-upload it to use it, and then delete it again. And that's a sort of
Mm-hmm.
behavioral hack. But there's a sort of Applightenment where you kind of see through an app. You know what I mean? Like I sort of saw through it, and I don't want to spend time on that now. Like I don't want to. I don't have to use willpower to resist.
Yeah, that's great. And I think those types of inquiries is really going to make or break the next generation, and even just kids these days. Like, are we going to be able to develop those like tech hygiene? Really, is what you're talking about.
Do you think how we're used to getting things will change the practice? So let's take trauma and TikTok. So trauma work, when I did it, involved large, long courses, long books, complicated things. In the last literally 2 or 3 years, there's been a huge number of Instagram and TikTok trauma people. So I just spoke to one in Egypt who talks about female genital mutilation. She does, Instagram videos, 1 minute long in Arabic. This is how she's sort of spreading awareness of sexual trauma in the Arabic speaking world. Shout out to Yasmin. And, wow, amazing. It's reaching loads more people, but it's very bite sized. I mean, there's only so much depth you can have about everything. Has to be a little dance. Everything, not so much Yasmin stuff, but everything has to be like entertaining, and it has to grab attention. The 5 things to know you've got, childhood trauma, and it's all these little dancing monkeys on my social media, and they're talking about subjects like meditation and trauma, which I was used to the baby boomers, Shinzen's 2-hour lectures at 9 o'clock at night kind of style. I wonder if this new the medium changes the message as well, right?
I think it absolutely does. And like you said, there's pros and cons to that shift. It's certainly not inherently bad. It's certainly not inherently good. It's complex. And it's up to the content creators and to be responsible and to do a good job. But I think overall, at least with the examples that you just mentioned, that sounds really interesting and good and wonderful. And even if I also think with these types of, like, I guess, social media and also applications, they shouldn't be your only tool in your tool belt. They're really good for catching people's attention and maybe piquing their interests and providing a certain level of content around that. But it should be the first step in maybe taking a more thorough course that's more linear, or connecting with a mentor, or reading that book that actually lays it out in great detail. So I think that a variety of tools, and that's like one of the main reasons that Brightmind decided to start offering coaching and retreats, is because our users needed it. It's like we got them interested in meditation with the app, and I never thought that the app was going to replace coaching and retreats. And so I was like, all right, well, now it's just time for us to build that out. So I think it's great as long as it's put into context of other types of resources, that honestly, those other types of resources have major cons. Like almost no one wants to listen to a 2-hour Shinzen lecture at 9 p.m. when they're tired. So that's a major drawback. And so, yeah, to mix and match these resources in the modern age, I think there's huge potential for reach and impact, as long as we think about all of the content and where it fits and how it fits together.
Yeah, I'm wondering what how the tech around mindfulness will influence the future. I mean, the apps seem to be popular. There are some big ones, you know, the Headspaces. There are some sort of more boutique ones. Buddhify is one I used to use, which I liked. I always like that design. And there's others that just seem like big messes. There's others that just kind of go. Say again.
I was just saying lots of messes. There's at one point there was a new mindfulness app every 2 weeks being submitted to the App Store.
What are the most popular ones? Do you know, like do you know sort of which are the ones
you mentioned? Yeah, I mean, it's like Headspace, Calm, 10% Happier, Simple Habit. Waking Up is pretty good. Waking Up is pretty good. Sam Harris's one. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard Steve, my colleagues, obviously Steve uses that. He says it's good. Sam Harris never kind of resonated with me somehow, so it was a little bit dry for me. Somehow.
Yeah, that's my experience too. But some people seem to get a lot.
I like him, but it just doesn't quite. It hasn't got the magic, the sort of Shinzen.
I don't think he has the teaching chops. I think he has really interesting philosophical and psychological insights, but I just don't think he's that good of a, like, if you're going to talk about meditation teaching, it's a very specific skill set, right? And it's from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like he has as much of that. But again, a lot of people do seem to get a lot out of his stuff.
I don't quite get the state transfer either. So for me, there's the quality of technique being taught. There's a sort of personal resonance. There's the teaching ability. Like, that's where I'm strong. I'm a teacher from a family of teachers, you know? And then someone like Shinzen or Paul Linden, again, like one of my teachers, there's a state transmission for someone who's really gone deep. And I think even on an app that does come across like,
that's interesting. You totally. People respond a lot to just the tone of the voice, right? And I think, and when I record, I'm absolutely practicing while I'm recording, and I put so much intention into. It's a performance, really, and people are it's a lot of unconscious stuff, but people do pick up on, I don't know where you're coming from, even just through the audio. Audio is a pretty powerful medium, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're subtly aware of where something is just performative. And because there's a sort of meditation voice people take on, which but
you can tell the difference between a performed meditation voice and an authentic one.
And there's a sort of impersonation of the deep relaxation that comes from depth experiences. And pretty cheesy. And the other thing that's a major factor is a lot of meditation teachers are learning online now. So, you know, Sounds True, for example, run a huge meditation course with some very good teachers, some well-known teachers. And I know Tammy there runs great courses, you know, so no disrespect for her. I think of all the people in this space, Sounds True are one of the ones I respect most in terms of the quality of what they do. And they're training hundreds, if not thousands, I think, of teachers. And that's just one that, you know, that comes to mind. I only want to give publicity to ones that I think would be well put together. There's others that I won't mention. You know, there's other companies out there who are sort of less integrous. And they're training thousands of teachers. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is a numbers game. I'm training every year several hundred embodiment teachers like that, and other people too. Like, soon there'll be more embodiment teachers and more meditation teachers who have trained online than in person. But
and I think it's very similar to, I think, what we were just talking about in terms of there's pros and cons to that, in that it does make it more available and the world needs it, but it's maybe not as, it misses some really important flavors. And what I would say again is that can't be the only way that you're learning. I think that's, and I don't think that that's the case. I think most people who are in those trainings, like, they've done several in-person meditation retreats. They may have gone to their local Sangha, and if not,
talk to the kids less and less.
Yeah, you're probably right. So that is then, I think it would be responsible for those teacher trainings to be like, look, you also have to do a bunch of other stuff outside of this. But I could imagine how that
we have a lot of practice they need to do. And I do find that a lot of students just naturally want to come to live events as well. You know, like, I'll see the really dedicated students, they'll turn up at live events, so they're not trying to get a certificate.
Much more fun.
Yeah, because they're like, okay, great. It's the obvious next step. Where do you think it's going then? The sort of with all the apps and the changes in teachers being trained online, like where are we going to be at in 10, 20 years with meditation teaching? Is it going to be an AI doing it for us? I've heard Shinzen say he wants to replace himself with an AI.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that absolutely, I'm not kidding. AI absolutely is an option. There are already projects going. There are large language AI algorithms that in general can interact with humans using human language in a pretty freaking smooth way. And so the step from that to having the system learn a few meditation concepts isn't actually that profound. And so I don't know how I feel about that, but that is a direction that's happening as we speak. And 10 years from now, I think it's possible that it could be developed to the point where it's actually pretty good. And so that's certainly one direction. But again, I don't think that that's going to replace the need for human to human contact, because for example, I'm also aware of some research where people listened to meditations on recording versus listening to someone one-on-one doing a guidance, and the effect was far greater when you were actually with someone and sharing a space with another human. And so that was just one piece of research. But I think no matter how good the AI gets, I still think that human happiness is fundamentally a human affair. And there are, I mean, kind of, also what we were just talking about in terms of like the tone that's conveyed via a meditation, like what's being conveyed isn't necessarily some kind of note or rhythm or timbre, I think is how you pronounce it. What's being conveyed, you could say, is actually a direct experience. The teacher is experiencing something and they're holding that experience as they speak, and that's what the student's picking up on. So yeah, I think there always will be place for at least some level of teaching. Again, maybe it's not like learning. You might be able to learn the basics better from an AI 10 years from now.
Well, there's AI therapists now.
AI therapists too. Yep.
I was talking to my therapist about saying, you do realize your industry is going to get replaced.
I know. Sketchy.
I went, no, really? Like, really? But then, and then this, his argument was yours, which I also think is true, that there's this personal human connection part that just is irreplaceable.
Yeah. So who the hell knows how that is going to unfold? It's these are really big questions. And I mean, I do think also an interesting counter to that would be, it's possible that future generations will be able to emotionally develop that connection with a computer, right? So people who really grow up, imagine interacting with AIs from the time that you're 3. It's like you actually do kind of have a relationship to your nanny, that, like, even though the nanny's an AI. So I don't know, it sounds really weird, and who the heck knows what that will bring. But I guess I think it's generally really exciting that people are learning meditation, and they are excited to learn how to teach it, and they're sharing it with their friends, because a little bit can go a really long way. Bless you. And so I think 10 years from now, we do have a potential to have a lot of people knowing even just the basics, and that could produce a really big shift in kind of baseline human happiness. But there are also lots of other forces molding the world, and a lot of other exponentially growing things that aren't as positive. So the way that those forces will dance is, I mean, that's the show. That's the show we're all watching.
Yeah, right now, especially, and tech is a huge part of that in terms of how it's shaping how we think and our politics, and who's in charge of it and who gets to censor it, and whether Elon Musk puts the ex-president back on Twitter and all the rest of it. Like, this is a central conversation, and I really want the meditators and the embodiment people to be part of that conversation,
Right.
rather than just saying, oh, I don't do technology, or I hate apps, or I hate social media. It's like, that's a cop out. This is part of our world.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I mean, I think there's two things. One is, if it's really harming your mental health, then absolutely do what you need to do, and maybe don't participate that much online. But one of my, I say in my standard bio that I'm dedicated to helping you develop positive feedback between your meditation practice and your ability to be effective in the world, so that the more effective you are, the deeper your meditation practice becomes, and vice versa. And one of the things I mean by that is, like, this isn't just about like what's easy or what feels good. Like, this is about being effective. This isn't actually about you. This is about helping others and engaging with the world. And right now, at this point in history, a lot of the world happens online. A lot of really important interactions happen online. And it's almost like not a choice. It's like our responsibility to engage with that, because that's where the world's at. And you gotta adapt, and you gotta confront that directly. And that might come with a lot of bad aspects to it, but it doesn't. It's, if you can, if you're in a good place, then it actually is really important to, again, like, be effective. This isn't just about you. This is about how you can help others.
Yeah, and you've done the sort of the monastic thing, right? And now sort of CEO of a tech company with bottom lines and businesses and, joint ventures and all the rest of it. I mean, like, there's the sort of the old away from the world and in the world as ways to wake up. I mean, I imagine you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, lots of thoughts. I trained in a monastery for a year and a half, and it was an extremely formative experience in terms of.
Which one, sorry?
It's called the Monastic Academy. It's in Vermont.
I've heard of it. I think that's what I was curious about it.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, a big part of their ethos actually was along these lines, about like producing leaders to enter the world and be effective. And so it was very much, I mean, that training combined taking really serious old school Zen Rinzai training, but then also with this really engaged worldview. And I don't know, it's so complex. I mean, I definitely see the value in, because the mind is like an onion, and you actually can continue to shed hatred and ill will. It just keeps going. Like those ladies in the Himalayas that spend 15 years repeating Om Mani Padme Hum, like, they're doing something, and that's really valuable. And so I have a lot of respect for more traditional monastic trainings. But at the same time, I don't know. I think that what this, at least especially this modern world, needs is people who can really, it's almost like the insight isn't the limiting factor. It's the ability to integrate the insight into effective action. That's actually the limiting factor. And I guess that's kind of how I view my life is, I've developed a certain level of insight, but people are a lot more awakened than I am. I haven't done that much practice. I haven't let go that much, but I'm not sure that. I think what the world needs is people who can integrate even just a little bit of insight into how they act in the world. And so that's really where my practice is, and that's how I kind of conceptualize my own life decisions. Is I'm running a company, I'm working my ass off, I'm helping a lot of people, I'm having to be really creative, and I have to balance a lot of responsibilities. And can I do that all with a smooth nervous system? Because if I can, that's like a huge gift to the world. And I may not be as highly concentrated as other people who are doing more traditional training, but at least my insight is really interfacing with a lot of lives. Like, I'm touching people.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, just employees, people who work with you. Like,
Yep.
I'm acutely aware that I'm several people's boss, and my nervous system is a really big part of their happiness or unhappiness.
Totally.
Like some days sort of guiltily so, some days like, oh, I think I positively influenced that employee. One came to me about an addiction issue a little while back. We have a little meditate at the beginning of our meetings. And I kind of go, and other days I'm thinking, I'm a mess. They're regulating me. It's kind of like parents should be regulating their kids, not the other way around. It's kind of like that as a boss. They're not my kids, right? They're grown-ups, but it's like they shouldn't be regulating me. And I think a bad manager, a bad CEO often is the sort of ranty, crazy guy who everybody else is having to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, yeah, we'll see how. Yeah, it's a really big question, and I think there's a lot of answers, and it's really complex in terms of how the historical traditional monastic training fits into this modern world.
So we want to wrap it up fairly soon. I got up very early and went to another country today, having packed up my life and thrown a lot of stuff out. It's great. It's a good feeling throwing stuff out.
I love it. I'm a minimalist myself.
My wife more than me, but she made me get rid of a lot of stuff, and not one bit of stuff that I've thrown out. I'm not quite monastic, but there's one bit of stuff I'm going to regret throwing out. There's that moment of panic this morning when I woke up and went, we threw a lot of shit out yesterday. But it's there's still some stuff in storage, but I'm a bit knackered, so we're going to wrap up fairly soon. Sure. Is there any topics I might be missing? You've sent me some good notes. I had a quick look at those, but is there anything we might have missed in my slight days today?
No, I mean, I think it was just wonderful to jam on all sorts of fun topics. We have so much in common to talk about. So yeah, thanks again for having me.
The tech stuff's interesting because there's not actually that many people, maybe in Silicon Valley, but there's not actually that many of my embodiment friends that really go down there. Is there something the app can't do yet that you really want it to do? Like, what do you think is like the sort of next step for the app, or for what you'd like it to do?
That's a good question. Well, one thing we tried to build, and it's just not working. It would be nice if it did work. You can see it right now in the app. It's called the label tracker. And the basic idea is one family of meditation techniques is called noting and labeling, for people who don't know. And one option, if you're practicing a noting and labeling technique, is to speak the labels out loud. And so there's a lot of things going on, but one of the things you're doing is you're keeping yourself concentrated by saying a short word or phrase about once every 15 seconds. And to say it out loud makes it super obvious to yourself if you're distracted, because it's just like a very on or off, black and white. Like, can you keep saying the word or not? So spoken labeling is great. So we designed what's called a label tracker, which is it uses the device microphone to track whether or not you're labeling. And if it doesn't hear anything for 15 seconds, it dings a little bell to remind you to keep up with your labels, but it's silent. As long as you stick with the practice and you stay concentrated, it doesn't do anything. But the moment you fall off, it gets you back into place. So it's a little concentration booster. And
got it.
Yeah, we released it. It's in beta right now. It turns out to be really hard because all the different phones have different microphone engineering and different volume levels.
Right?
And so it's kind of in beta and doesn't really work very well right now. But I actually just exchanged a few emails today. We might have another version of that code that might work better. So stay tuned. We might release something that actually works.
Possible to link it to some kind of an electro-shock conditioning device?
Well, that's another option that we've certainly joked about.
Like a shock collar that kind of, if you fall off, your concentration kind of gives you a shock and kind of Pavlovianly conditions you to stay meditating.
Yeah. I think that's what we need.
There's apps that I use, the headband that makes a sort of nice bird noises, a sort of positive reinforcement.
Yeah, Muse.
Yeah, it's but it sort of sings nice bird song when you kind of focus your mind. This headband I used to use, but
yeah, that's a really nice user experience as well.
Yeah, it was good. It was pretty good for a while. I used it for a couple of years, but I think the electro-shock one, that's the future, Toby. I want to see that.
That's the future. Is an AI that shocks you if
a
you say the wrong
super
thing.
intelligent supercomputer that shocks you unless you're developing compassion at all times. I think we've found a dystopian Buddhist future. That's not been done in any novel I've read. They're normally sort of fascist or something else. So,
Right.
all right. So we better end because my mind's clearly not working. And this has been great, Toby. You've inspired me. I'm going to get the app out tomorrow morning and see what this new version
Yeah,
is.
check
and
out the
go
new
on,
version. I think you'd
check
really
out
find
the
it
new
interesting.
journey. I genuinely will, actually. You've inspired me, so thank you. And
Right.
yeah, people just look up Brightmind, right, on the App Store and
you'll see it.
the equivalent. It's all there. Anything else to direct people to? That's it, I guess.
No, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, Toby Sola, just at Toby Sola, TOBYSOLA. Yeah, and I'll see you on Brightmind.
Nice one. Thanks for joining us, Toby.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.